everyone, and welcome to today's show. Switching up a little bit today, it's just going to be me doing the Q&A. Usually, I have Peggy with me, and and today I'm flying solo. So thank you to all of you that c- can join me for this live Q&A today. And just as a reminder, my name is Karyn Seitz, and I am one of the lead teachers at a New Life Center where I'm a mentor and teacher for married women to learn how to find their happiness within by taking their walls down and building a relationship with themselves so that they can finally have the marriage or relationship that they've always wanted with their spouse or partner. And also, just another reminder for the framework of our group, our message and who we teach and who we're here to serve are women who are with good men, so men who are generally trustworthy, reliable, responsible by nature, and that within the context of being with a good man, that you're a woman who has her walls up, which is really, really normal. And we're going to get more into that today as I address some of the questions that were submitted for me to answer. And the framework for our group is three guiding principles. That one, you are responsible for your happiness, that happiness is an inside job, and that there's no thing or no one that can make you happy, especially if you're unhappy on the inside, that that's something we have to take responsibility for as individuals and do the work to get to know who we are so that we can be happy internally. And the second guiding principle is that you are the only person that you can change, that your husband can't change how you feel about yourself, that he can't change the hurt you might be experiencing in your marriage, and he can't change your experience of the relationship, that you are the only person that you have any control over to change. And when we can open ourselves up to that and embrace that truth, then our lives get so much simpler because we become empowered to be the one to take charge of our experience in our lives and in our relationship with our spouse or our partner. And the third guiding principle is that authentic intimacy begins with having a relationship with yourself, doing the work to get to know who you are, knowing what you like and what you don't like, and feeling good about yourself. Then when you're able to do that for yourself and have a relationship with yourself, then you're able to bring yourself into your relationship without your walls, able to be vulnerable and just show up as yourself. And when you do that, the intimacy begins within you first, with yourself. And then you can step up and share that with your partner or share that with your husband. So with that being said, keep those guiding principles in mind, not only in this video as I'm answering some of the questions that have come in, but also when you're reading through posts and when you're reading through comments in the Facebook group. Really keep that in mind as a way to help you shift your perspective, to see a new way to show up in your marriage and to show up in your life. And that will help you understand what we're doing in the Facebook group and what we teach a whole lot more. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the questions that have been submitted for me to answer. And for those of you watching, if you have any questions that come up or you want clarification on anything that I'm talking about, then put that in the comments of this video and I'll be able to address those as they come up. So here we go. The first question that I have today is, so it's up to the woman to get the man to love her. This seems really one-sided to me. Can you help me understand? And this is a question that can come in a lot, either through the Facebook group or even when I begin to work with other women to teach them how to show up differently and how to take their walls down. I know it can seem like we're making this all about the woman and that the woman's the bad guy in the relationship, or all the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the woman. And that's not where we're coming from. Again, we're working from this narrow framework that if you're with a good man, and you're a woman with her walls up, that in order to be happy in your relationship and have intimacy with your husband, you have to do the work to drop your walls and make yourself happy. And that when you're able to do that, you empower yourself to show up in a completely different way. And that helps your husband to feel safe again, to re-engage in the relationship. Because what happens is, women, when we have our walls up with good men, and that's really, really normal, it's not bad, it's not wrong, there's not anything malicious about us. It's just human nature that we go through different relationships. It can start in high school or even middle school when we start to have our first boyfriend or first relationship, and we get our hearts broken, and that happens time again in life. And the more that happens, the more that we close our hearts off, and we begin to push other people away. So when we get married, we've already got our walls up, we've already got our hearts closed, and so we start to push our husband away. We even push our family members away and other people that are close to us. So it's just normal human nature. It's not anything bad or wrong about us. And so what happens is we end up pushing our husbands away, and they begin to feel bad about themselves. I know my husband shared very candidly with me that how I showed up in our relationship with my walls up, he became almost scared of me, scared to approach me, scared to bring things up, because I always made him feel wrong. And so he just withdrew and began to disengage from our marriage and from me. So when I learned to take my walls down and take responsibility for my happiness and just began to work on myself, then he began to feel safe again and re-engaged in the relationship. So it's not about getting our man or getting our husband or partner to love us. It's really about recognizing and being willing to see that we have our walls up so that we can do the work to take them down and find that innate softness in ourselves. And then our husband will open back up to us, and all those problems that result from us pushing them away and being guarded in our relationship can actually begin to be resolved. So that another piece on this that I want to touch on is understanding that we have so much of the control, or all of the control, in the relationship to set the tone for it as women. And that can be a tough pill to swallow. I really didn't want to know that when I began doing this work. But as I embraced it and stepped into it, I really did experience it, to where when I was happy, it set the tone for my husband then to relax and loosen up in the relationship. And I saw how I was feeling or how I was showing up affected him. And we have a saying in our culture of happy wife, happy life. And it really is true that when you're with a good man and you're happy, that changes everything. And your husband's going to show up in a totally different way. But the problem is we take that saying, happy wife, happy life, and we put it on the man. We think that they're supposed to be the ones to make us happy, and then we can have a happy life. And that's that central message, that central theme, that cannot work, because no one can make you happy, especially if you're unhappy. So when you do that work for yourself and you become happy within, then it really does set the tone for the marriage, and you will see and experience your husband open up and lighten up. So moving on to the next question, is I want to have sex a lot more than my husband, and he often seems disinterested. Why is that? What's that about? And I can really relate to this. In the beginning of my relationship with my husband, I use what I have found in my experience with him, and also what we have found in over 15 years of working with other women at a New Life Center, and the research that we have done, is that a lot of times we will use sex as a form of control. So, like I said, in the beginning of my relationship with my husband, I wanted to have sex a lot more than he did, but it wasn't coming from a place of wanting to have more sex for the sake of having sex. It was coming from a place of not wanting him to leave and wanting to pull him in. And so it really was kind of this form of control. And what that does to a man is it actually pushes him away, and it makes him feel like he's not a man because maybe he doesn't want to have sex that often. It's not that men don't want to have sex, but when I'm showing up in the relationship with my walls up and being um, emasculating towards my husband, meaning seeing everything he does is wrong, not letting him be right, or um, treating him in a way that he constantly feels like he's doing something wrong, then he starts to shut down and doesn't feel like a man. And so then he doesn't want to engage with sex, or he might pull away. And so that's a lot of what goes on in that dynamic, where it really does come from they're not feeling good about themselves because of how we're showing up guarded and pushing them away and constantly finding the things wrong that they need to change or they need to work on. And that's eventually going to show up and impact your sexual experience and your sexual relationship with your husband. And again, I saw that in my own relationship and my own marriage. And I've worked with many other women where they had really similar problems. And so when we start to, again, show up differently and do the work on ourselves to feel good about who we are, then a man will feel safe and re-engage, and then that will solve issues there. So moving right along, our next question is, my husband isn't picking up after himself and doing normal chores around the house. I feel like everything is on me. I feel like his mother rather than his wife. What's the point of being married if I have to do everything myself? So I think you're going to start to see a common theme in the answers to this, and what it is that we're teaching um, is when you're constantly nitpicking or nagging on your husband to do things around the house, um, he begins to feel like no matter what he does, it's not right. I know for me, a lot of times I would ask my husband to do something around the house, or he would do something that needed to be done. And then I would go back around and do it my way and do it the way that I wanted it done. And so he began to feel like, what's the point? What's the point of even helping out? What's the point of even trying to do these things if I'm just going to be told I'm wrong again? So again, this stems from having our walls up and um, understanding that those walls are up because we don't want to be hurt. So when our walls are up and we don't want to be hurt, we become really controlling. And our husbands feel that. Even for me, I pretended not to be controlling and pretended to be nice. But underneath all of that, that's exactly the place that I was coming from. And my husband could feel that. That was very palpable in our relationship. So he didn't want to help out. He didn't want to do anything. It was almost just kind of hands up. Why even try? So again, when we began to soften and begin to open ourselves back up, good men want to help. They want to provide. They want to be there. But when we're constantly pushing them away and constantly giving them the message that they're wrong or not right, then they're absolutely going to disengage, and it's going to feel like everything is on you, and they begin to feel like a child because of how we're treating them and showing up with them. We're again giving them the message they can't do anything right, and so we treat them that way, and then that's exactly how we perceive them. So I know, again, it's that tough pill to swallow, but it really does change everything when we just start to focus on what's going on inside of ourselves that we don't feel good about ourselves. So we can start to turn that around. And then we see the positive things in our husbands instead of constantly focusing on the negative and constantly trying to control them. When I feel good about myself, then I begin to see the good things in my husband. And the more and more I see the good things about him, the more and more I want to be there and I want to be engaged. And I watch my husband step up with me. It happens time and time again. And that's what the women that I work with, that's their experience as well. So the next question is, my husband and I have a pretty good relationship, but he has a really big problem in communication. Our problems keep escalating because he never wants to talk about anything. He just withdraws. How can I get my husband to be willing to talk things out? So there's this big myth that a huge problem in marriage or a huge problem in relationships that needs to get resolved is communication. And that's actually just focusing on the surface. That's a symptom of something much deeper. That what's actually going on is that when we don't know who we are and we don't know what we like or what we need or what we want, then we can't even really communicate because we don't know ourselves. And we're looking to our partner to give us some sort of identity of who we are, and we get completely lost from ourselves. So that's absolutely going to affect communication. And that's a big myth, that's the area you need to work on in a relationship, that's the area you need to work on in a marriage. And it's just not true. What we actually have to work on is getting to know ourselves and learning about who we are and becoming strong and independent with ourselves so we can just show up as who we are in our relationship. And when I do that, and when the women that I've worked with do that in their marriages, then their husbands step up to the plate and they want to talk things out. They want to find resolution and come to a place where you're working your problems out. But what happens is when we're depending on our partner to tell us who we are, or depending on our partner to fix everything, as a woman who has her walls up with a good man, we're not really wanting to talk things out. We're wanting to prove that we're right. And so our husband gets the message again and again that they're wrong and we're always right. So what's the point of talking? And it doesn't feel safe for him to come to the conversation and want to talk things out. So again, when we get to know ourselves and learn who we are, then we can actually, that's when we can be be in a partnership with our spouse or our partner and learn to work together, because I'm not looking to make him wrong anymore. I'm not looking for him to fix my problems or change me or make me happy in any way. I'm already doing that for myself. So I can then from that place really accept my husband for who he is and want to be on a team with him, want to be on a partnership, rather than constantly finding what's wrong in him or what he needs to do to change. See if I have anything else on here. Again, this also comes from a place of being controlling and not wanting to get hurt. So I know for me, I often came into the conversation already wanting to control it, already wanting to guide it in a certain direction. And my husband would just shut down because they really do feel like, what's the point? She's just going to tell me I'm wrong anyways. So again, we really have to work on getting to know ourselves and taking those walls down so that we can have resolution and we can get to a place where we're resolving things together. So I have the last question. My husband wants to spend time doing anything but spending time with me. It's either video games, sports, or working long hours. I feel quite alone in my marriage. I thought marriage was a partnership where each person was there for each other. So, in my experience with this, with myself, and in working with other women, what tends to happen is I like to use the term ice queen, that when we have our walls up and we don't feel good about ourselves and we're putting that on our husbands, blaming them for our unhappiness, then we turn into ice queens where we're actually really withdrawn and kind of giving silent treatment or just not there in the relationship. And we begin to show up really cold and hard and rigid with our spouse or with our partner. And so they don't want to spend time with us. I mean, if you think about that, I know, again, all these are, it's a tough pill to swallow, but when you think about that, and that's how you're showing up in your relationship, and you're constantly looking for what's wrong in your husband or what he needs to be doing differently, why is he going to want to spend time with you? And that was something I really had to look at in myself when my husband was withdrawn and I was the ice queen in my marriage. Was why would he want to be around me? I wasn't very kind, and I was often telling him constantly how he needed to be doing things differently, or why his dreams were wrong, or why the things he wanted in life were wrong. And I wasn't very fun to be around. So that might be a good question that you can ask yourself is, would how with how you are with your husband, are you someone that you really want to be around and spend time with? Because a lot of times what's happening is we don't even feel good about ourselves and that we don't even like ourselves. So would that why would our husbands want to spend time with us when we're in that place? And a couple weeks ago, David and I did a video on having fun. And a lot of times in a marriage, when we're blaming our spouse or blaming our partner for our own unhappiness, we're not fun anymore. We're not the person that we were when we first met our spouse or first met our partner. And all that goes out the window and everything becomes so serious. So we don't become very much fun to be around. So again, when I take responsibility for my happiness and just work on the things that I have control over, and I take responsibility for my behaviors, then I begin to get to know who I am. And I can show up as fun in the relationship because I'm taking responsibility for my happiness and taking that burden off of my husband. So I am someone that he wants to be around. And a big piece for me that started to help me show up differently was just starting to use my common sense of, if I'm showing up crabby and controlling and nitpicking, then common sense tells me my husband's not going to want to be around me. But because I become so blind by blaming him for what's going wrong and blaming him for why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling, I lose any self-awareness to see who I am in the relationship and how I'm showing up with him that's causing him to not want to be around me. So we have to slow down enough and really get honest and see what we're doing and how we're showing up that's causing all these issues, that's causing you to feel your marriage to feel one-sided, and all the weight and responsibility falls on yourself. That looking at yourself and how you might be controlling with your husband so he doesn't want to help out around the house, to look at how you're showing up, communicating and trying to have conversations. And if you're trying to control everything and just get everything on your side, you want to look at that. Or looking at if you're the problems in your sex life with your husband, how you might be showing up that's pushing him away and him not wanting to engage. And then lastly, again, looking at who you're being, that he doesn't want to spend time with you. And I know, again, I've said this several times today, but it is a tough pill to swallow. But the point of looking at these things and coming from this angle, again, is so you can empower yourself to look at the things you do have control over, to look at the things that you can change, so that you can do that work and have the experience of seeing, wow, this really does work. When I take my walls down and show up with my husband and can be vulnerable, wow, he really does engage. I think we've said this several times in our videos. It really is like magic. When I embrace this and I realize that it wasn't for my husband, it wasn't for the marriage, that it was for me so that I could be happy and have a healthy relationship, which I had never experienced before because of how I showed up with all my hurt and with all my blame. That when I embraced that and started to do that work on myself to get to know who I am, to find my happiness internally, to just work on the one person I could change, which was me, being with a good man, my marriage and the dynamic between my husband and I completely shifted. And he began to reengage because again, he felt it was safe. He could feel my softness and feel me there. And that's exactly what the women that I work with, this is their experience in their marriages and relationships again. So it really does work. So those are all the questions that I have today. And thank you for joining me for my first solo live Q&A. I'll be doing these regularly, so please keep submitting your questions through post or by sending me a private message. And listen, if you're starting to hear this and you're really starting to see, wow, I do have my walls up. I am unhappy. And if what Karyn is saying or what this page is saying is that if I'm not happy, there's nothing anyone else can do to make me happy. And you want to get to the root of that and look at what's going on in yourself, so that you can show up differently and do that work to be happy, then private message me and let's book a call. We'll just get on a call to talk and help you get crystal clear on what the real issues are in your marriage, where you want to be, and how you can get there. And if we can help you do that, then we can talk about that too. And if not, that's okay. We can just get you clarity and help you get awareness that you haven't seen in your marriage so that you can start to do something about it. So I would love to talk and help you get that clarity and see what's going on. So if that's speaking to you, then private message me and we will book a call. Thank you all so much for joining me. And I hope you all have a really nice weekend and I will see you soon. Thank you.